Dr. Theron, welcome to Groot Plaas. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Ek gaan sommer begin deur te vra, hoekom hierdie studie aanpak? Ek meen van alles wat mens kan navorsing doen, hoekom spesifiek hierdie tema?
So I chose this topic because we all know about the serious drought that took place in the Western Cape between 2015 and 2018, and where the city of Cape Town was going to run out of water. It was day zero, and everyone was using.
I remember that.
Yes, and I feel that everyone was talking about the impacts on the city of Cape Town and the urban population, and there was this gap in what was actually happening to the farmers and how were they affected and how did they respond, because the response that they took to this drought could also help us learn about how we can adapt to climate change or how we can prepare for climate change.
Absolutely. Nou, wat was van die bevindinge in die studie? Jy kan vir my breedvoerig verduidelik, wat het jy bevind?
So we had quite a lot of findings, and there was a really interesting findings. I think the main findings were that the farmers in the Western Cape have a very high adaptive capacity, which basically means they have they're able to use the resources they have available to them, and these resources don't necessarily mean just natural resources, but it could be financial, access to markets, and all of that, to offset a lot of challenges that they face. And so during the drought, obviously they had challenges with low rainfall as well as water restrictions on irrigation, and farmers were able to a large extent manage these impacts through other avenues, such as prioritizing vineyards, high value vineyards for exports, and other crop management strategies. So choosing drought resistant cultivars. But we also found that weather forecasting was extremely important in preparing farmers for the growing season, and that there is a lot of scope to improve weather forecasting for farmers in the region and across South Africa to help them prepare not just on a weekly basis, but if we can improve seasonal forecasts, that could really go a long way. And yeah, I think that's the two main findings.
That's wonderful. As mens so 'n studie aanpak, wie het jy almal ingetrek om die navorsing te kry? Hoe intens was dit geweest?
So it was quite intense. We actually we focused on apple and wheat farmers because they are two very large and profitable industries. Apples is the second largest deciduous fruit industry in the Western Cape, and it has a lot of export value. And wheat is the largest grain crop in the Western Cape, and yet they have very different crop management strategies and very different challenges. So we really wanted to focus on like how it affected crop production from rain-fed all the way to irrigated crops. And for the study, I interviewed farmers and people within the industry, the agricultural industry, to local governments to get a really the sense of how the drought impacted different sectors. But the main focus was on farmers. Unfortunately, it happened during COVID, so I did have some challenges with the interviews, but we made it.
Well, luckily you did it and you got the information. Before we go to break, wil ek sommer net gou weet dat hoe lank vat dit om 'n studie soos hierdie aan mekaar te sit?
It took me 4 years to do. It is quite an involved study, especially when you're talking to people, talking to farmers. It is time consuming, but I think it's also incredibly important to find out what's happening on the ground. I think there's a lot of value in understanding how people are experiencing drought, and not just in one region, but across regions. And you can't take lessons from one region and necessarily put them on another. because everyone has different challenges. So that was really important for me to talk to people and to see how it affected them.
Was die boere ontvanklik om inligting te deel? Ek meen, ek dink dit is so lekker vir boere as mens belangstel en probeer navorsing doen. Het jy maklike inligting gekry?
I did, and it was something that I was very not surprised, but it was
you can say surprised.
So yeah, our farmers were very friendly. They were very willing to give up information and to chat with me. And some interviews lasted over 2 hours. We just talked, and it was really special. It was incredible how open they were. But I found it pretty much across the agricultural sector. A lot of people were willing to share information about this, and I think because it is such an important topic and just how serious the drought was.
Dit is absoluut die waarheid. Nou ons gaan na die breek gaan ons gesels oor so lekker Afrikaanse woord, die veerkragtigheid van boere en hoe hulle moet slim beplan vir die toekoms. So ons is nou terug, bly gerus ingeskakel. Ek gesels met Dr. Simone Theron en sy het 'n wonderlike studie gedoen oor maar net die droogte en hoe dit in die Wes-Kaap gaan. Nou, Dr. Theron, ons praat nou van die woord veerkragtigheid. Dis so 'n lekker woord in Afrikaans, maar hoekom is dit belangrik dat boere spesifiek veerkragtig moet wees? Wat bedoel jy daarmee?
So with resilience, this word is to me it's a very interesting word, and I think it's actually I think it's very academic, which is actually why when I did the interviews, I asked farmers what does veerkragtig mean to them,
yeah.
To get an idea of like how it is interpreted across different parts of the system, and not just in an academic way, but it generally means to be able to cope with adverse impacts. So with the drought, and to come out of the drought, not worse off. Obviously, you will be affected and impacted, but to be able to draw on the different resources available to cope with the impacts of drought. So, yeah.
Wat was van die antwoorde wat gegee is? Ek dink dit is altyd vir my lekker om vir iemand te sê, hoe sien jy, hoe verstaan jy die term veerkragtig? Is daar interessante antwoorde gegee?
So yes, it was interesting because for me, I went into this with the focus of drought, but I didn't want to push farmers to talk about something that maybe wasn't important for them.
Yeah.
I might think, oh, the drought was really bad, and I want to ask them how bad was it, and then they're like, but we have actually more challenges than drought.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see the challenges that farmers did bring up, where they say the drought worsened those challenges. Things like, financial decisions that they have to make constantly, and political decisions and stuff like that. Which it was interesting. And then drought and climate is more of I would say. I talked about in my thesis as like a backdrop to which other more direct threats play out. So.
Ek dink die volgende logiese vraag is, watter rol speel droogte in die landbousektor, soos wat u bevind het?
So that's a really interesting question, and I think it can play. To me, I think it can play a role of innovation. If we learn from droughts, if we do studies such as this one, where we try and understand how did drought impact farmers on the ground, and what kind of actions did they take to mitigate the drought, and we can really learn from this, and hopefully we can innovate and bring up new solutions so that we're not so badly impacted by drought in the future. But I think right now drought plays a very constraining role in agriculture, where there are large losses in production across the board, just from actual harvest all the way through to post-processing and jobs and stuff.
Nou, ek weet in die studie het u gefokus die kort en die medium termyn, so dit is van 2020, kom ons sê, tot 2065, dink ek. Nou, as mens dit in ag neem, hoekom moet boere 'n punt daarvan maak om by klimaatsveranderinge aan te pas?
Yeah, so I looked at climate data that we have, and I looked at where there will be sudden changes in the climate, and I found that the period between 2040 and 2050 is going to be, at least for the Western Cape, so where we're going to find sudden changes. So it might feel quite far in advance, but that's 20 years, 30 years from now, and especially for apple farmers and farmers who plant orchards and trees, the trees are grown for about 25 years. So planting trees now will actually put us in that time zone where the climate has changed considerably. So it is decisions that you need to think about.
Maar wat beteken dit in die praktyk? What does it mean practically for farmers? What should they do?
So some of the things that they can do is to look after their soil and to try and rehabilitate the soil. I know in the Western Cape, conservation agriculture, a lot of farmers have adopted conservation agriculture, and it was cited frequently as one of the reasons why they didn't experience such harsh, the drought wasn't as bad as it could have been. So but it's not something that's been widely adopted across South Africa, and so I think looking after the soil, trying to improve the organic matter in the soil, not tilling as much, and keeping stubble on during the non-growing season is important. And this also has a two-pronged approach, is that it also helps to store carbon, so it can help to mitigate climate change.
That's very interesting.
And then another thing is to switch to water-saving technology. So drip irrigation and precision irrigation can really help, and to diversify the farm. So you can diversify on the farm, growing different crops, but also diversify outside of agriculture and having other enterprises where in times of drought you'll still make enough money to weather.
Ons het so net onder 'n minuut oor. Vertel vir my vinnig, jy gebruik die mooiste woord toekomsbestand. Boere moet toekomsbestand wees. Wat beteken dit?
I think it means to be future-proof. So to once again be resilient. To have to be able to prepare for the unexpected. And I do think South African farmers are incredibly resilient and adaptive, but long-term droughts like this are a challenge. And so being able to weather these kind of droughts is important.
Dokter, dit is wonderlik om jou by Grootplaas te gehad het. Dankie vir die studie en sterkte met die pad vorentoe.
Baie dankie. And thank you for having me.
Ons is dan nou by die einde van die program. Dankie dat jy ingeskakel het. Bly net daar waar jy is vir die groot ontbyt volgende. En ek sien jou weer. Ek hoop jy het 'n wonderlike dag verder. Totsiens.